Welcome along to the 12th Deep Dive in the Life in the Trinity podcast. We're your hosts for this introduction to theology with the help of the Church Fathers.
And think of this as, well, an unofficial guide to help you dig into Donald Fairbairn's fantastic book, Life in the Trinity.
Today we're tackling Chapter 7, the Incarnation. It's a huge topic. We'll mostly follow Fairbairn's approach, but we're also bringing in a classic, St. Athanasius on the Incarnation.
Including that great introduction by C.S. Lewis. It's just such a foundational text for this whole discussion.
Absolutely. So our mission today, to really unpack this mystery of God the Son becoming human, what did that actually mean for us, for our relationship with God?
And how did the early church even begin to talk about this? How do they handle the tricky questions it raises?
Right. And finally, what does Christ's life itself, lived on earth, show us about, well, both divine love and perfect human love? Okay, let's dive in. This really is central, isn't it?
Oh, completely. It's the absolute core. And Fairbairn, leaning heavily on the Fathers, helps us see not just that it happened, but the why, what it achieves. And the starting point, like he says, has to be John's Gospel, chapter 1.
Yeah, John just drops us right in, doesn't he? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Wow, what jumps out about this word?
Well, first off, as the source makes clear, this isn't just, an idea. John's talking about the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity.
Okay.
And you see this if you put John 1 next to Hebrews 1. Hebrews says, God spoke by his Son, through whom he made the universe.
Ah, the one through whom the universe was made. Both passages mention that.
Exactly. John calls him the Word. Hebrews calls him the Son. Same person.
And right there, John gives us these massive truths. First, his eternality. In the beginning was the Word. That's different from Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created.
Right. Genesis marks a starting point for creation. John says the Word was already there, before creation, eternally with God.
That distinction is huge, isn't it? It sort of sets up that mind-blowing idea later that we can actually share in the glory the Son had with the Father before anything was made.
It really does. Then John says, and the Word was God, not just divine or godlike.
He was God, full stop.
But then crucially, and the Word was with God. So you have this incredible dynamic. He is God, yet he's distinct enough to be with God. It points to distinct persons within the one Godhead.
Okay, so eternality, divinity, distinction. And then his role in creation. Through him, all things were made.
Everything that exists that isn't God himself came into being through the Word. So John paints this picture right away. Distinct persons, Father and Son, eternally one God, working together in love, the Son being the Father's agent, if you like, in creation.
Understanding who this Word is eternally seems absolutely foundational before we even get to him becoming human.
It has to be. And John builds right on that. He moves on to verses 12-14.
Where he talks about the Word coming to his own, meaning the Jewish people, but, well, many didn't receive him, but for those who did believe, Jew or Gentile.
They received this incredible thing, the right to become children of God, because they're born of God.
So how does believing in this Word bring about such a massive change? How do we become God's children?
John answers it directly in verse 14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us.
Became flesh. There it is, the Incarnation.
That's it. And flesh here, as Fairbairn stresses, means truly, fully human, not just wearing a body like a costume, not appearing as a ghost.
But taking on real human existence. Physical, spiritual, the whole deal.
Yeah, think about 1 John 1, seeing, hearing, touching the Word of life. The Son, who is eternally God, came down and actually became human.
And the mind better is, he did this while staying God, right? He didn't stop being God to become human.
Exactly. He remains fully God while simultaneously becoming fully human. One person, two realities.
John also says, we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father. That phrase, one and only, monogenes, that's important, isn't it?
It's vital. It highlights his unique, singular relationship with the Father. He is the only Son of God by nature, totally distinct from us, who become children or sons of God by adoption.
So it points to his divine sonship, his unique place with the Father. And seeing him, the incarnate Word, Jesus, that somehow lets us glimpse that eternal love between Father and Son.
That's the idea, and the source links this directly. Seeing his unique sonship is connected to our ability to be adopted into God's family through him.
And he's described as full of grace and truth. Fairbairn connects this back to the Old Testament.
Right, to has that loyal covenant love, that unfailing loving kindness and faithfulness, truth, reliability.
So in Jesus, we see God's constant, faithful, personal love fully displayed. the love within the Trinity now aimed right at us.
Exactly. Both the love the Son has for the Father and that same quality of love directed towards humanity. It makes it visible, accessible.
Which brings us to how the early church had to kind of, well, put words to this. They came up with phrases like son by nature for Christ and sons by grace or sons by adoption for us.
And that distinction is just fundamental. Christ is the one true natural Son. He is a person of the Trinity, eternally in that unique relationship with the Father.
Whereas our relationship is
Different.
It's given to us by God's grace. It's adoption.
Right.
It's not ours by nature, not by birthright.
Cyril of Alexandria, quoted in the source, really hammers this home. He says Christ isn't a son by adoption like us. He's truly son. And that's the difference.
Right. And Cyril argues that our adoption, or becoming like God, wouldn't even be possible if there wasn't the true Son first, the one whose likeness we're supposed to be conformed to by grace.
Okay, but hang on. Doesn't that create a bit of tension? John calls him the one and only Son by nature. But Paul, in Romans 8, calls him the firstborn among many brothers. How can he be both?
Yes, the church fathers definitely wrestled with that one, and their answer is really illuminating.
What do they conclude? They said he's one and only when you're thinking about him as God in his eternal relationship with the Father, eternally unique.
Okay.
But when you consider that same divine person after the Incarnation, now existing as a human being among other human beings, then he's the firstborn among his human siblings, the ones adopted into God's family through him.
So, one and only refers to his eternal divine status, firstborn, to his status within redeemed humanity after becoming human.
Precisely. Athanasius explains this really well. The source quotes him arguing that we couldn't know God as Father without the real Son. Adoption depends on him. He says the Word became Son of Man so that he could be the firstborn, bringing us into his family as adopted siblings, making us sons and daughters of his natural Father.
That explanation really gets to the why it had to be the natural Son. If Jesus were just, say, a really godly man that God worked through,
then he couldn't actually give us salvation in the way the fathers understood it, because salvation isn't like a thing you earn and pass on.
Right.
It is participation. It's being brought into the Son's own relationship with the Father by adoption. It's sharing his fellowship. And only the one who is the Son by nature can grant us access to that unique, eternal, loving relationship.
So, the person of Christ is salvation, in a
Yeah.
sense. He's the connection.
Exactly. So the Incarnation, God the Son personally becoming human, was God's specific, necessary action to heal us, to restore that broken connection, and bring us right into the heart of the Trinitarian life. By grace, we get to share in the very fellowship the natural Son has always had with his Father.
Cyril sums that up pretty powerfully, too, linking Christ's identity as the natural Son who took flesh directly to our adoption. It all hinges on who he is.
It really does.
Okay, so given this unique identity, how did the early church try to articulate this carefully, especially when, well, other ideas started popping up?
The core understanding they landed on was Christ is one person, but that one person possesses two complete natures, a divine nature and a human nature.
One person, two natures. That's the classic formula.
It is. But the fathers, as Fairburn shows, were really insistent on clarifying who that one person is. That was the crucial bit for them.
And the non-negotiable point was?
That the person of Christ is God the Son, the second person of the Trinity. He isn't a human being who somehow got elevated to divinity or just a man God lived inside in a special way. No, he is God the Son living a personal human life on earth.
So the baby in the manger was the eternal Son of God.
Yes, the same person. It's not God in a man, it's God the Son becoming man. The identity of the person is key.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's why they could talk about him doing things as God and as man.
Exactly, because it's the same person, God the Son, acting. And he acts in ways appropriate to both his divine nature, like knowing things only God could know or performing miracles, and his human nature, like getting tired, hungry, learning, sometimes seemingly at the same time.
Augustine puts this quite beautifully, doesn't he? The source quotes him. Something about the Son being equal to the Father as God, but our fellow as man.
Yes. He intercedes for us insofar as he is man, while not concealing the fact that as God, he is one with the Father, one person functioning in both capacities.
And Athanasius makes a similar point about grace.
He does. Christ both gives grace, as the divine word from the Father, and receives grace. But he receives it as the Son of Man, representing us, because humanity is now his own. It's the same person, God the Son, who both provides salvation and, acting for us, receives it.
Which leads us to the Big Council, Chalcedon in 451. Their definition confirms the two natures in one person idea, but the source says the real emphasis is on the person.
Absolutely. That phrase, one and the same, gets repeated over and over. They stress one and the same Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, made known in two natures, which are united unconfusedly, unchangeably, indivisibly, inseparably. The focus is relentlessly on the who. One and the same Son, the only begotten God, the Word, the Lord Jesus Christ.
So the subject of everything, the birth, the life, the death, the resurrection, is the eternal Son of God, who now exists with both a divine and a human nature.
That's the core affirmation. And Cyril brings it back again, insisting Jesus was truly God's Son by nature, because our adoption relies on being conformed to him, the one begotten by nature.
It all circles back to that central point.
Yeah.
They had to be clear about who the person is, God the Son, because only he could grant us that share in his eternal relationship with the Father. Only the natural Son makes us sons and daughters by grace.
But, we have to acknowledge this whole idea wasn't easy then, and it isn't easy now. The idea of God becoming human, it raised a lot of questions, seemed, unfitting to many, as Athanasius found when arguing against non-believers.
What kinds of problems did people have with it?
A big one was just that, isn't
Yeah.
it, kind of? Beneath God, the infinite word, to be confined in a physical body, especially a fragile human one.
Yeah, I can see how that would sound strange. How did Athanasius tackle that?
With a really neat argument, actually. He basically said, look, the word is already present and active throughout the entire universe, right? Holding it together, giving it life. The universe itself is a kind of vast ordered body. So if it's perfectly fitting for the word to be active in the whole cosmic body, why would it suddenly be unfitting for him to act within a part of that cosmos, namely a human body?
It's like that analogy in the source, a person's mind or power fills their whole body. You wouldn't say it's unfitting for it to be in their big toe.
Exactly. If his presence in the macrocosm, the universe, is fine, his presence in the microcosm, a human body, is totally consistent. It actually makes sense.
What about the idea of just fixing things with a command? Why couldn't God just say, be saved? Like he said, let there be light.
And another logical question. Athanasius points out the difference between creating something from nothing and healing something that exists but is broken. Creation ex nihilo just needs God's will.
But redemption is different.
Redemption is about healing something already existing, humanity, which had become corrupted internally. The healer had to actually engage with the patient, meet the corruption where it was.
So because the problem, sin and death, wasn't just external, but had gotten inside human nature.
Yes. Athanasius stresses that corruption was established within. It wasn't enough to just keep death away externally. Life itself had to be woven into the very fabric of humanity to push corruption out from the inside.
That's where the asbestos analogy comes in.
Right. You can't just keep fire away from flammable stubble. To make it fireproof, you have to soak it in something fire-resistant, like asbestos. Life had to soak into humanity, which had death woven into it, to overcome death from within.
So the Incarnation wasn't just like Plan B. It was the specific necessary remedy for humanity's internal condition.
That's how Athanasius saw it. And he didn't just leave it at theory. He pointed to what he called arguments from facts, real-world evidence that this seemingly unfitting event actually worked and was truly divine.
What kind of facts did he point to?
Things people could see happening around them, like the mass abandonment of idol worship after Christ came, the pagan oracles falling silent, demons being demonstrably defeated. She even mentions them fleeing at the name of Christ or the sign of the cross.
Wow. What else?
The decline of magic. And this is fascinating, how Greek philosophy, for all its brilliance, struggled to really change masses of people regarding, say, immortality or virtue. But Christ, often through uneducated people, transformed entire communities.
And the changes in behavior too, right?
Absolutely. People turning from cruelty and warfare towards peace, farming, prayer, the rise of chastity, virginity, and the martyrs, their willingness to die rather than renounce Christ. Athanasius argued, these aren't just human achievements. This is God at work. This proves Christ's divinity and power. His challenge was basically, look at the results. How can you not see the divine power behind this?
Those are pretty powerful arguments from experience. Okay, so finally, let's look at Jesus' life itself. How does his time on earth show us this blend of divine and human love in one person?
Fairburn suggests we see it in two main ways. First, we see what God's love looks like, because Jesus is God the Son. His life makes that eternal divine relationship visible.
Back to John 1:14, seeing the glory of the one and only, and John 1:18, Jesus making the Father known, and Jesus' own words, like, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father.
Right. And his miracles, John calls them signs, weren't just power displays. They pointed to who he was, often fulfilling specific Old Testament hopes about the Messiah.
Like turning water to wine, feeding the 5,000 hints of the great feast, healing the blind, like Isaiah prophesied, raising Lazarus, pointing to victory over death.
Exactly. And while people expected a human Messiah, Jesus kept doing and saying things that pushed beyond that, pointing to his divinity.
Like before Abraham was born, I am, or I and the Father are one. Those were huge claims.
Definitely. So through his actions and words, people could, according to John, actually witness the father-son relationship playing out on earth. They saw divine love in action.
Okay, so that's seeing God's love. What's the second way?
The second way is we see what perfect human love looks like, sharing in that same divine fellowship. Because Jesus, while fully God, lived a fully human life, embracing its limitations. The Gospels show us what perfect humanity looks like.
Luke's gospel is good on this, isn't it? The source highlights his reliance on the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, the Spirit is there at his conception, baptism, leading him into the wilderness, empowering his ministry. Even God the Son, as a human, shows perfect dependence on the Spirit, just as we should.
And prayer. Luke mentions him praying so often.
At least 10 times specifically. Again, modeling perfect human behavior, constant reliance on and communion with the Father through prayer.
And thirdly, that incredible compassion he showed, especially for the outcasts.
Samaritans, Gentiles, tax collectors, sinners, shepherds, women, children, the poor. It's striking. Unlike our typical human tendency to seek status, Jesus' perfect humanity involved this radical, boundary-breaking concern for everyone, especially the marginalized.
Paul picks up on this idea of Christ's perfect humanity in Romans 5, right? Contrasting him with Adam.
Yes, the first Adam brought disobedience, sin, death. Christ, the second man, brings obedience, righteousness, life. Paul says, through the obedience of the one man, the many will be made righteous.
So Christ's perfect human life undoes Adam's damage.
It's the crucial link. His life, lived as the perfect human, connects our broken humanity back to God's life. His divine identity and his perfect human work are both essential for us to receive life through faith in him.
So wrapping it all up, the Incarnation isn't just a doctrine. It's God the Son, personally diving into our reality to heal us, restore us, and invite us into the very heart of the Trinity's own life and love.
That's the incredible picture the fathers and Fairburn following them paint for us. It's God reaching down to lift us up into his own fellowship.
Well, we've certainly had a deep dive into Chapter 7 of Life in the Trinity, exploring this immense mystery of the Incarnation, who the Son is, and what his life reveals.
And next week,
And we'll jump back into Fairbairn's book with Chapter 8, focusing on redemption.
looking forward to both.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive today. And remember to abide in the Godhead this week. Until next time.